Well, good morning, folks. It's the real Captain Kirk here. It is the 22nd of February, only 1 week left here of meteorological winter. Thought we'd do a real quick recap here of the U.S. trends here, going from fall through our spring outlook. October, November, again, warmest in 4 years, third warmest in 36 years, so much above average temperatures back in the late fall. Those bars are the trends, U.S. trends versus average. Red line is the U.S. National Temperature Index, which is cooling through the winter season, obviously. Driest, least snow in 3 years back in the fall. Here in December, January, February, the meteorological winter, coldest in 6 years, but that's still 17th coldest of the past 36 years. So kind of right in the middle, about almost average, just a hair below. Snowier than last year, average, again, on a national scale. Not too hard to find the big polar vortex here. That was some of the coldest weather in 125 years with 15 to 16 degree temperatures below average on a national scale. That's pretty epic. Good news here today, 22 Feb. We're looking at first above normal day in 16 straight days. So again, the U.S. is finally today having an above normal day on a national scale. Warmest since December 23rd, so almost 3 months here for this temperature today. Look at the spring outlook. Again, going to be a little bit choppy start to front half of March, but we do believe March is going to end up being above average on a national scale. And spring overall, we actually think is going to be quite warm, actually, especially May. May actually may be underdone here. We think May could actually be one of the warmest on record. But for sure dry. Driest in 9 years, least snow in 9 years. Classic La Nina signature, which appears to be getting back on track here. Looking at, again, around that Valentine's Day period, which was the coldest of the entire winter, and then a couple days later, 73% of the country actually had snow on the ground. So that was near historic records. Data here only goes back to 2004, but again, average would be closer to about 39%. So again, historic to see that much snow across the U.S. here around Valentine's Day. Looking at the Northeast regional season-to-date snowfall here, it's kind of feast or famine. It's amazing just the differences across states. Here in Pennsylvania, as an example, Erie, normally the big winter of snow, they'd average about 80. They're only at 59 inches. So they're about 22 inches below normal out in the western part of the state, yet here in the Lehigh Valley, eastern PA, we're actually 28 inches above normal. Same thing in New Jersey, Atlantic City, only 7 inches. That's about 7 inches below normal. Yet up in Newark, the northern part of the state, 44 inches and 23 inches above normal. Even across New York State, you see some differences here where Binghamton, recipient of that big blizzard back in December, 90 inches so far, but that's 30 inches above normal. Yet just down the road there, Syracuse, only 61 inches, and that's about 35 below normal, 35 inches below normal. So even D.C. area, again, about 8 inches below normal. So it's been feast or famine, but overall in the Northeast here, we're trending about the snowiest in 6 years. But again, just a hair above average. We've certainly had some much bigger years in the past. Looking at the Great Lakes, obviously with this polar vortex, the Great Lakes did add a lot of ice here. You can see that right now we're at 45% coverage across the Great Lakes. That's about average. It's not too far off the norm here. We'll add a little bit more, but this might be just about peaking here. This time last year, only about 18% coverage, and 2019 we had quite a bit more, 67%. So again, we've been as high as 93%, even 95% lake coverage. If you look at that chart at the bottom there, again, so not too crazy with the ice cover here, but again, certainly added some here with the polar vortex. Looking at last week here, week ending 20 February. Now, this is a national retail calendar ending Saturday. Here in the U.S., it was 12.6 degrees colder than last year, making it the #1 coldest in 36 years. In fact, quite honestly, very near the record, 125-year record cold for the U.S. 66% wetter than a year ago, 9th wettest in 36 years. Pretty heavy snowfall, obviously. 443% more snow than last year. #1 snowiest in over 36 years. Looking across Canada, a little bit cooler than last year. Europe, quite a bit colder, 10.4 degrees colder, coldest in 10 years across Europe. Russia, also the coldest in 10 years, just epic change from last year, 19.8 degrees colder. China, warmest in 4, still cool down under. It's their summer, but they've had a very cold summer for sure. Australia, 1.9 degrees colder, coldest in 12 years. India, a tad cooler. They're going to get hot here. Brazil, a few degrees cooler, again, cooler than last year. And the maps inset left are trends versus average. Looking at this week across the U.S. here, last week ending of February 28th, a tad cooler, 0.7 degrees cooler than last year, but still 14th warmest in 36 years, above average national temperature. So polar vortex is lifting out and heading back to Siberia. 18% wetter than last year, but that's still 17th driest in 36 years, below average national precip this week. 35% less snowfall than last year, least in 21 years. So we're getting a break here from the polar vortex, cold and snow. One more system traversing the east here, but looks like the end is near here for this polar vortex. We'll run through these 6-day snowfall max. We've got one system here moving through the Great Lakes and our area of eastern PA with some light to moderate snowfall here today. But then looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, another system in the Rocky Mountains. And then it fizzles as it goes across the country here. So not a lot of snow here this week across the U.S. other than maybe the higher elevations and briefly here in the Northeast. Looking at next week, first full week of March here. Again, a little bit cooler, getting a glancing shot again of some colder weather. It doesn't look like it's a prolonged event and certainly not as widespread as the last polar vortex. About 5.6 degrees cooler than last year. Still 18th warmest in 36 years. So right in the middle, about average for the U.S. overall. Wettest in 10 years, 7th wettest in 36 years. We'll see about that big wet system there in the Ohio Valley. Snowier versus last year, but 13th least in 36 years. So below average snowfall. So again, the good news is winter may be about waning here for sure. Looking at the 2-week world aggregate. Now this is just aggregating the last part of February and the first part of March here. So again, a little misleading. We're starting to warm up here in the U.S. Very, very cold weather remains there in Siberia. Very hot in India, and it looks like Australia might warm a bit. In Europe, very, very warm. So they're enjoying some early spring weather there in Europe after a really cold winter themselves. So preset versus average, map inset left there. So with that, folks, we hope you have a great week, and we will be back here this time next week.